Ink Ribbon.
Name, Ashley Graham. Age, 20. Daughter of the United States President. She was kidnapped by an unidentified group while on her way home from her university. The kidnappers' motives are still unknown, although there's reliable information that the perpetrator is an insider. Only a handful of people know about this kidnapping. It's been kept under wraps, mostly due to the fact that we can't determine who the traitor is. The guys in intelligence say they have reliable information that Ashley's been sighted somewhere in Europe. But until we find out who the insider is, I don't know what to believe. It could be a ploy. We have very few leads as to the whereabouts of Ashley, but members of the Secret Service and anyone related to Ashley are being questioned by an investigative team. Even active agents are being investigated for any information. It's just a matter of time before the kidnapper is exposed. Recently, there's been information that a United States government agent is here investigating the village. Do not let this American agent get in contact with the prisoner. For those of you not yet informed, the prisoner is being held in an old house beyond the farm. We will transfer the prisoner to a more secure location in the valley when we are ready. The prisoner is to stay here until further notice. Meanwhile, do not let the American agent near the prisoner. We do not know how the American government found out about our village, but we are investigating. However, I feel this intrusion at this particular time is not just a coincidence. I sense a third party other than the United States government involved here. My fellow men, stay alert. Chief BUTLER'S Mendez. Hehehe. 15 blue medallions, 7 in the farm, 8 in the cemetery. For those of you who destroy 10 or more will be awarded. The rest is illegible. As instructed by Lord Sadler, I have the agent in confinement, alive. Why keep him alive? I do not fully understand what the Lord's intentions are. I would, however, think he'd keep them separate, not confine them together as has been ordered. I don't expect Louise would trust the stranger, but if by chance they did cooperate, the situation could get a bit more complicated. If for some reason an unknown third party is involved, I don't think they'd let a chance like this slip by. But maybe it's all Lord Sadler's ploy, leaving us vulnerable so that this third party will surface, if they even exist, that is. It's an unlikely possibility, but if a prowler is already amongst us, then our plans could be ruined. I guess the Lord thinks it's worth the risk if we're able to stop whatever conspiracy is at work. At any rate, it's the Lord's call. We will trust his judgment as always. Regarding the 2 fugitives, the apprehension of Louise is our top priority. The American agent a distant second. What Louise stole from us is far more important than the girl. Unless we get it back, the girl will become useless to us. We must get it back to execute our plan to the end. If it gets in the wrong hands, the world would become a totally different place than what Lord Sadler has envisioned. At all costs, we mustn't let that happen. Nevertheless, we're not letting go of the girl. To ensure the agent does not get to her, I have locked the church door where the girl is being held. Anyone who needs access to the church must first get approval by Lord Sadler. There is a key beyond the lake, but it should be safe now that the Del Lago has been awakened by our Lord. No one will get across that lake alive. Plus, our same blood courses through the agent's veins. It'll just be a matter of time before he joins us. Once he does, there will be nobody else left that will come looking for the girl. There's an important item hidden in the falls. If you're able to get to it, you might be able to get Ashley out of the church. But I'll warn you, the route to the church isn't a walk in the park by any means. They've deployed what's called an El Gigante, so God bless. About what's been going on in your body, if I could help you, I would. But unfortunately, it's beyond my power. The whereabouts of SERA are still unknown. Most likely he's using an old secret passage taught to him by his grandfather who used to hunt in this region long ago. I'm pretty certain that he's hiding our property somewhere in the forest. If his grandfather was still alive, I would have used him to find SERA. But how did he find out about the egg injected into his body? And the fact that he was able to remove it before it hatched is concerning. Another factor that concerns me is that SERA escaped with our property just before the American agent arrived. I don't believe that was just a coincidence. There has to be another player involved in this. In order to settle this whole situation, we have to capture SERA and wait for the effects of the drug to wear off before we inject him with another egg. Once this is done, whoever is behind all of this will surface. Nobody shall interfere with our plans. Those who do shall suffer severe consequences. Just a while ago, I was informed by Lord Sadler that our men had shot down a United States military helicopter. There shouldn't be any outside interference for a while now. Unless the United States government determines who the traitor is, they can only initiate very small covert operations. We must use this time to our advantage and recapture the girl. The 2 Americans can only get out of our territory by using one of 2 routes. This is where we'll stop them. We shall make use of our forces to the greatest degree. We will deploy a large number of ganados in one of the routes to ensure that they do not slip by us. For the other route, we shall leave the task to El Gigante. Whichever route they take, the agent will never leave here alive. Not with the girl, at least. I clearly underestimated the American agent's capability. He's still alive. I thought that we could wait until the egg hatched, but at this rate, he could destroy the entire village before it does. We must take care of this nuisance. We shall change our priorities. For the time being, we will cease to hunt for Luis and ambush the 2 Americans. There is the building used to enlighten betrayers just beyond the point where you get off the lift. It's a perfect place for ambushing them. If all else fails, they would still need to face me in order to get past the last gate that leads out of the village. For only before my sight will the gate open. I have confirmation that SERA has entered the castle. Why he would return during his escape leaves me to question his motives. But we must seize this moment and capture him. We will get the other 2 Americans after we apprehend SERA. It appears that he took some vaccines when he stole our sample. The vaccines we can do without, but we must retrieve the sample, for it is our lifeblood. I feel there is somebody else, or some other group involved in this whole affair. If the sample were to get into the hands of the other entity, the world which we seek to create will not come. We must apprehend SERA as quickly as possible. There are some parasites that have the ability to control their hosts. It's basic knowledge among biologists, but not much is known on how the parasites do it. Studying these parasites specifically might reveal some clues as to how the powers of Las Plagas work, and perhaps provide more insight on the victims of Las Plagas, the Los Ganados. Here is a list of some parasites that have the ability to manipulate behavioral patterns of their host. Dicrocelium. Once the larva of this parasite migrates to the ant's esophagus, it alters the behavior of the ant. When the temperature drops in the evening, the infected ant climbs to the top of a plant and clamps onto a leaf using its mandible. It stays there immobile until the next morning, placing the ant where it's most vulnerable to be eaten by a browsing herbivore, such as sheep. One could conclude that the parasite is manipulating the host's behavior to make its way into the body of the definitive host, Galactosomum. The larva of this parasite makes a home inside the brain of a fish, such as the yellowtail and the parrot bass. Once infected, the fish make their way up to the water's surface, where they'll swim until eaten by seabirds. Once again, this peculiar behavior can only be explained by the parasite's desire to get into the bodies of the seabirds. Leucochloridium. These parasite's sporocysts develop in the snail's tentacles. The sporocysts are vivid in color and pulsate continually, somewhat like a worm. Surprisingly, the infected snails make its way to the top of a plant where it's more visible to the eyes of a bird, therefore more likely to be eaten. Once eaten by a bird, parasite will complete its metamorphosis into an adult. For many years, the Salazar family has served as the Castellans of this castle. However, not everything is bright, for my ancestor has a dark past. Long ago, there was once a religious group that had deep roots in this region called the Los Illuminados. Unjustly, however, the first Castellan of this castle took their rights and powers. As a follower of this religion and the 8th Castellan, I felt it was my duty, as well as my responsibility, to atone for that sin. I knew the best way to atone for that sin was to give power back to those who we once took it away from, the Los Illuminados. As expected, it took a little time, but I was able to rejuvenate the once sealed Las Plagas. With this success, I was one step closer to the revival of Los Illuminados. The reason why I released the Las Plagas from deep under the castle and gave them to Lord Sadler was not to repay for the sins of my ancestors, but I felt certain that the Lord would make better use of this power to help save the world. To save those who have sinned with the power of Las Plagas and to cleanse their souls, creating a world without sinners. The way it was meant to be. Once cleansed, they would become one of many ganados where they will find their reasons to live. After that, the world will be succeeded in creating, and after the Lord has succeeded in creating the world in which he has envisioned, then the sins of my Salazar family will be atoned for. Knowing that Mr. Raymond Salazar had no family, Lord Sadler must have used his strong faith in the Los Illuminados to his advantage to talk Sir Salazar into undoing the seal of Las Plagas, once done by his ancestor. Senor Salazar would never do such a thing unless he was in some way being used unknowingly. I should have sensed the Lord's dirty scheme sooner. I feel I'm partly responsible for all of this. I used to have an idea as to what the Lord is planning, but Senor Salazar was being used. It's too late now, however. Senor Salazar has already taken the Plaga into his body. There is no turning back once the Plaga has turned into an adult in the body. The Plaga parasite will not die unless the host dies. There's no cure. Perhaps Senor Salazar may have been vaguely aware of the Lord's plan all along, but it's hard to tell. Nevertheless, there's nothing I can do about it now. I have served the Salazar family for generations. I am prepared to continue my services until the very end. As you may have heard, Luis SERA has been disposed of by Lord Sadler. The sample is back where it belongs. I had hoped the whole matter could be resolved without troubling the Lord. However, as long as the sample is safe, we can all rejoice, for our time is nearly at hand. Now that the sample is back in our safe hands, it'll be a bit more difficult for that troublesome woman to get it. In light of all this, it's unfortunate that SERA had to go. Like us, he would have had a bright future, if only he had shown more faith in our beliefs. As for the other 2 Americans, the Lord has left the matter in our hands. We must not disappoint the Lord. We shall capture Ashley and take her to the Lord and dispose of the American agent. Thanks to the efforts of the Novistadors, we have been able to recapture Ashley. We shall prepare for the second ritual as quickly as possible and make Ashley an official member of the Los Illuminados. While we prepare for the ritual, those of you who feel inclined can attend to our American friend. We should be able to hold off our friend for at least a while by jamming the gears in the clock tower with something. I think if we jam gears in 3 places, it should give us enough time to prepare everything for the ritual. Now go and entertain our American tourist. The first Castellan buried in the Las Plagas deep underground below the castle to hide the very existence. But when Salazar released Las Plagas, no one thought he could bring them back to life. Because when Salazar found them, they were all just fossilized remains. Everyone knew that the parasite organisms could not survive without their hosts, that they couldn't sustain life on their own, but when Salazar and his men excavated the remains, it almost appeared as if Las Plagas were just waiting to be discovered so that they could resurrect. Several years later, unexplainable convulsions started occurring among the villagers who helped with the excavation of Las Plagas. Then one day, all of a sudden, these villagers turned into violent savages. They later found out it was caused by the Las Plagas. Although they appeared fossilized, they were able to survive the long years by lying in a dormant state at the cellular level, remaining in a spore-like form. Apparently, during the excavation, the villagers inhaled the spores and within their bodies the parasites became active again. This is how the Las Plagas were resurrected. Even as I'm writing, the excavation of the Las Plagas continues. God only knows how many of these plagas have been resurrected, not to mention the countless number of ganados that have been created. Their inhumane activity must be put to an end. If they are not stopped, people around the world could turn into victims of this crazy cult organization. Once a plaga egg hatches, it's nearly impossible to remove it from the body, but if it's before it hatches, then it can be neutralized by medication. If it does hatch, you might be able to get it out by surgery before it turns into an adult, but it won't be easy. There's a high chance you won't survive the operation. As far as I know, the girl was injected with the egg before you. Her time is ticking. You should prepare yourself for the worst case scenario. There seems to be a female intruder among us. We believe she's connected with SERA. We also believe that she was the one who removed the egg injected to SERA before it hatched. She may have had him retrieve the sample before the American agent's arrival. It's obvious that her objective is the sample. We must get to her before she is able to re-establish contact with SERA. There's also reason to believe that she's working for somebody. We need her alive for interrogation. The female should be able to answer all our questions. After we have captured her, SERA will no longer be of any concern. As long as we retrieve the sample, you may dispose of him as you see fit. The hideous creatures such as El Gigante and the Novistadors are merely byproducts of the diabolical and inhumane experiments conducted on the specimens that were once human. But there's one type of creature that clearly distinguishes itself from the rest. These creatures are called regenerators. Regenerators have a superior metabolism that allows them to regenerate their lost body parts at incredible speed. I've never seen anything like it. It is this characteristic that makes them almost invincible to conventional weapons. But like any living creature, there is a way to kill it. Apparently there are plagas living in its body, somewhat like leeches. They can't be seen with the naked eye. They can only be located through thermal imaging. To stop its regeneration process, these leech-like plagas must be located and then destroyed. As far as I know, most of the regenerators host a number of these leech-like plagas. To kill the regenerators, each one of these leech-like plagas must be killed. Perhaps you have it figured out already, but you might be able to get out of here by using the waste disposal vent. Because of that agent, we lost Chief Mendez and Ramon. Nevertheless, everything will proceed according to plan. I must admit, however, the loss of my loyal men is a bit disheartening, but I will deal with it. Replacing the loss will not come easy. I must choose wisely, for the plaga reflects the conscience of their hosts. If chosen poorly, they could betray me. I need men who will swear their allegiance to me. I've learned my lesson when SERA betrayed me. I will not make the same mistake again. In this important hour, I cannot and will not have anyone stand in my way. I'll report my findings about the plagas here. The plagas have 3 distinct characteristics. 1. As mentioned previously, the plagas have the ability to manipulate behavioral patterns of their hosts. 2. The plagas are social organisms. By this I mean instead of living individually, they live in perfect social harmony. It is believed that they have a collective intelligence. This type of behavior can be seen among insects such as bees and ants. However, this kind of social behavior is rarely seen among parasitic organisms. Perhaps it was a learned behavior by the plagas. I'm finding out if it has any relationship with their first characteristic. 3. The plagas have exceptional adaptation skills. They are able to live off many kinds of organisms by creating a symbiotic environment quickly. This ability, when combined with their social behaviors, allows them to interact intelligently between hosts regardless of the host organism. I am ashamed to admit that my pure fascination with the plagas, in hindsight, has blinded me to the true research and objectives of the Los Iluminados. Even with the knowledge that Sadler was going to abuse the results of these experiments, I could not pull myself away from the research. As a result, I am just as responsible for this whole mess as he is. I now see that that was wrong, but can I stop their evil plans alone? It turns out that old man Sadler wasn't buying me from the start. Even though I succeeded in kidnapping Ashley, I sort of sensed this when Sadler didn't completely let me in the loop. Under the circumstances, I had no other alternative but to call for her assistance. Perhaps she knew this is the way it was going to turn out all along. My guess is that her ultimate goal might be different from Wesker's and mine. This is just the perfect opportunity to find out. And after I get rid of Leon and retrieve the sample, I'll put her in a body bag along with Leon and send them both to Wesker. From the initial stage of the research, we have been searching for a safe and practical removal procedure of the plaga. Ironically, it turns out that the real objective of this research was not to find a way to remove the plagas from the infected persons, but to find a way so that the plaga could not be removed from the body easily. In the end, we were able to find out that Las Plagas could be only removed by exposing them to a special radiation. The only drawback with this method is that it's a very painful procedure. Since the plaga attaches itself to the nerves, there is a possibility that it may impair the consciousness of the host. Another fact that must be mentioned is that once the plaga grows into an adult, the removal procedure could kill the host. But perhaps death isn't so bad when you think about the alternative. The real power of the United States lies in 3 areas: the Justice Department, the administrative bodies, and the military. In order to take control of these areas, we must influence the minds of the people who advise the president. After this is done, the rest of the departments will quickly fall under our sway. If by chance the United States were to figure out our plan, the damage caused should be minimal. We will still be able to conquer the country as planned using our backup plan. Once we control the country, we will use their intentional influence to our advantage. The rest of the world will fall swiftly. As already stated, if our plan doesn't go smoothly as expected, we'll proceed with our secondary plan. By sending in our special forces, we will infiltrate the country from within. Fear and chaos will spread through the nation like a virus. It'll only be a matter of time before the country loses its stability. At that time, when they're most vulnerable, we will strike. Rejoice, my brethren. The world shall soon be cleansed.